We want to be free. We want to do what we want to do. We want to have a good time. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a good time.
All right, we're back with another Bygone Bros episode on a hot Friday afternoon. We were so excited that we actually started recording this, and I realized that I wasn't recording on my end, so here we go again. But this is an episode that's very near and dear to our hearts, and if you can't tell already by our outfits, we are ready for an extreme competition.
Yeah. Woo!
Trevor, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling extreme. I'm feeling energized, caffeinated. The viewers at home, to paraphrase the product in question, I did in fact have to be spiked up. It was non-negotiable.
You got to be spiked up.
Exactly, yes. And sunglasses, the whole 9 yards, yeah.
Exactly. I got a haircut before this episode, so unfortunately I was unable to be spiked up, but I did what I could with today's outfit. So yes, as we said, today we're talking about the Xtreme Craze. I guess this would sort of be like late 90s into early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of, I guess, a subgenre of sort of, I guess you could say, edgy trends in popular culture. This one was a little bit different from a previous episode we've done on kind of gross out trends. I think there might have been like some, I guess you could say, overlap between the two topics. But Trevor, how would you say is sort of like the way you would describe sort of the extreme craze?
Well, I think it really comes down to extreme sports was a big part of that, and we'll go into more detail on that. But people just doing stunts and being sort of performatively reckless in a way, and a lot of the aesthetics of music and typefaces and things that carried into that. There was this rebelliousness, this kind of, devil may care, young male might have been the archetype, but that really started to inundate pop culture in a lot of ways. I mean, it crept in there a bit. You'd find video games about skateboarding and stuff on, beginning of dating back to the 80s, early 90s, but it really kicked into high gear around the turn of Y2K. And obviously, like we talked about a lot on our show, that was peak for us with the millennial tween teen era. So we've got a lot to dig into from our own recollections alone and some of the pop culture in that time. But that's what it nestles into right there: is extreme craze, extreme sports, extreme everything. You talk about boundaries; it's the lack of boundaries. That's what defines it.
Yeah, no, it's well put. It is interesting now that you mention it, that so much of it seemed to be driven by sort of sports and physical activity. It was in a way, I mean, we'll get into reasons that it went beyond this, but like it was like a very like sports driven craze. I feel like you said, it was about like getting out there and skateboarding or rollerblading or like any sort of activity that was considered to have like a at least a high degree of perceived risk.
Sure.
Like it was a really risky thing to do, but the fact that you were taking that risk and doing something really out there made you cool and made you stand out from the crowd, and that sort of bled into other domains as well. And yeah, I guess it probably was more kind of like a young man's game. I'm sure there were girls out there too that were into the extreme sports craze, and I think I remember there being shows and movies where they would have it, which was kind of silly, but at the time it was like, what, like this girl's into extreme stuff too, like it was this kind of like other aspect to it. What do you think sort of was the genesis of the extreme craze? Because I feel like the 80s did have an element of like tubular and, kind of, also sort of skateboarding, maybe even like things like The Simpsons, Bart Simpson, that sort of attitude of youths being into counterculture interests. But what would you say was maybe the extreme craze in response to something?
I mean, I think it was a convergence of factors. I don't think it was any one. I mean, a lot of social trends, we look back at decades, I mean, which is a lot of what we do on the show, but these things they make sense in hindsight, but in the moment, it's a lot of different converging factors. I think you have people moving increasingly more into urban environments, and a lot of the architecture and spaces sort of allowing for these kinds of activities, or conversely making people imagine ways to rebel against them, and a lot of the controversy that skateboarding would cause in cities, and kind of the adoption of skateboarding as not a crime, as sort of a rallying cry among some people, or pushing the limits, for better or worse, of what could be on television, and some of the stunts people were doing, professional wrestling gaining more prominence as something that children were watching, and the X Games, and that being something that picked up interest, burgeoning internet, burgeoning kind of teens and 20-somethings male-ish culture where there's this taste for adrenaline and for activities and magazines and media about people doing these things that you might yourself not want to do, but once you learn about them and once they've gained this kind of cultural prevalence that was started to creep up. People started doing more and more intense stuff, and it became the kind of thing that like is super fun to watch. And people are getting home video cameras. They're filming these things at home. They're feeling incentivized to film these things at home. We see the seeds of what would become people shooting stuff for clout on the internet now. And then Hollywood takes notice, and brands take notice, and it becomes a feedback loop. And like these things become popular. They start appearing more in popular culture. That influences more people to do them or want to see them, and then that just sort of keeps spiraling.
Yeah, I do think that's funny, and maybe this isn't just something exclusive to the Xtreme Craze, but that phenomenon where something begins as kind of like a counterculture sort of, edgier movement, and then ironically it becomes as big as it does, oftentimes because it gets picked up by companies that want to like use that trend to sell you something. Yeah. And to an extent, it does perpetuate that trend, but I think at the same time, it almost like accelerates the aging of it. Like it brings about the end of it faster the more that people get over inundated and it starts to feel so corporate. So it's a dual-edged sword, but like just a general observation on a lot of these trends, and maybe not just the Xtreme Craze. But like we said, like it's not all just like, oh, it was all just advertising that made the Xtreme Craze a thing. It was a legitimate event for a period of time. And I guess there's so many facets of popular culture that really leaned into extremeness. And I guess we've been talking about sports and whatnot. Why not just start there? So Tony Hawk, skateboarding. I don't think you and I growing up really did a lot of skateboarding. We had friends that owned skateboards, and we kind of like fell off them a couple times.
I literally and figuratively fell off on skateboarding because I think we had a cousin, at least, and I'm sure some friends that had one, and and this is the context I want to provide too, is it's like, even though I am not and never really have been that into sports, but my idea as a kid of what like was quote unquote cool, it was always dudes doing like skateboarding or like extreme bikes. And I was never so enamored with it that I went out of my way to do it very much. I tried a little bit of skateboarding and got very nervous very quickly and stopped. I was super into rollerblading though. That doesn't maybe get as much attention, but we had a roller rink near where we grew up, and I was just ripping around that thing, having a heck of a time. And, rode a bike, but never got too crazy about it. But yeah, no, it's so interesting in that way that it kind of became that sort of shorthand for what seemed like a kind of maturity, or what seemed like a kind of daringness at the time. In the games especially, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater to this day is an enduring series. People often forget, though, that it was not the only one in that series. Can you name any of the other ones?
In the Pro Skater series?
In the Pro series, period.
In the Pro series. Was there a snowboarding?
So, yeah, so too? It was, I don't, Activision, I think, was the publisher, if the name escapes me, but it was, so originally it was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer, Sean Palmer's Pro Snowboarder, and Dave Mirra's Pro BMX. So it was a whole, and Tony Hawk was the only one that had the gas, and that continued to be a thing. Those kind of have their own prominence, even among people that weren't that into them, and a lot of the imitators that they spawned. Even if I wasn't playing those games or doing those sports, I still was aware of them. I was reading the magazines and all these ads for these extreme sports games, and just being like, oh man, I guess that looks cool. Like, I don't really want to do it or play it, but, hey, rock on. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a lot of sort of board-based activities, or, things with wheels, things that you could really zip around on. Not just skateboarding, but like you said, also, snowboarding, surfing, of course, BMX, maybe even like kind of, what's the term? ATVs? All-terrain vehicles? Those kinds of things.
Quads,
race cars,
4x4s, whatever.
Quads and 4x4s, those kinds of things. Scooters. I think we both had Razor scooters.
We did have some Razor scooters. Yeah, the enemy of ankles everywhere.
Yeah, those things can really just whip around and smash into your funny bone and just wreak havoc on your lower extremities.
I did a few hops and spins on those in relatives' driveways over the years.
Yeah, I mean, we grew up kind of out in the country with more kind of gravel roads and dirt roads than much. So like, I feel like we didn't get a ton of use out of our scooters compared to suburban kids that could zip around their neighborhood, or bikes for that matter. Yeah. We didn't do as much of that, but we did have Razor scooters.
We did biking, but it was more leisurely, I would say. It wasn't mountain biking. It wasn't, shocks and pegs and all that.
Lucky.
Sledding. Yeah. Not to get too sidetracked, but I think the closest, where I would channel that energy was sledding, I think.
Yeah.
Because we did have hills, we did have snow, and they weren't so intense as to be able to skateboard or snowboarding. But I would really get into maneuvering on one of those down a hill. So I think I was always looking for ways to bring extremeness into my life, even if I couldn't quite channel it right. I was jumping onto and off of things with questionable safety in my tweens.
Right. On the subject of jumping on and off things, I was trying to remember was within reason. Was parkour considered part of the extreme craze?
I'm glad you mentioned that. I think it was near the end. I mean, I'm sure somebody can correct me on this. I in America, like I remember the prominence of that being, it almost like it was a pass of the baton. Because I remember that, and I don't think we need to make a whole parkour episode, so we can probably just have a side tangent about that, hop on and off of that, if you will. But I think that was like mid-late 2000s. I remember in movies specifically, parkour got big because like they put parkour when they did the James Bond reboot. One of the first things they wanted to do was establish this guy as being a new James Bond opening scene parkour.
Yeah.
And in later years we got some parkour movies, but that point it was kind of on its way out. I really struggle to name any. I'm sure I'm forgetting some examples, but like for it definitely in movies specifically, and I guess games for that matter, like Assassin's Creed, like a lot of games even to this day. Mirror's Edge, that probably came up a little bit maybe in our Fruta Guerrero episode. I'm kind of getting mixed up now, but running and jumping off of things, the kinetic of that, a lot of that kind of imagery. Yeah, you're right. That definitely, I mean, in that case, you're sort of, your body is, there is no board required. You are figuring it out all through yourself, which is maybe the most extreme of all, because then you got no safety net.
Yeah, you're doing flips, you're climbing up and over stuff, you're jumping over, gaps between buildings. It is extreme. Like I will not deny the bravery it takes to do like real parkour. I will also always think of that scene, which we're jumping ahead with extreme movies, but the Punisher movies were definitely extreme when those were coming out. And that great scene of the parkour guy who gets blown up mid-air in a flip with an RPG. And how
one of the great underrated film in parts.
in very specific parts. That is an incredible film.
Yeah.
But yeah, that may have been the literal death of parkour. But certainly I think the more we talk about it, I would consider parkour to be among the sports that defined the period of the extreme craze. Also, which this is not something we really grew up watching, and there are times where I actually kind of almost regret missing it. Like I don't think it probably would have been good for me in the grand scheme of things. Sure. But pro wrestling definitely was a huge component of the extreme craze, because you had, what would it have been at the time? WWF, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it went into,
because it was WWF, and then there was NW. I mean, people are going to be screaming at me in the comments. I don't know a whole lot about wrestling, like in the nuances. I know that there was a couple different leagues or whatever, like NWO, WCW. And over time, like many things do, it got monopolized, and now it's pretty much just WWE and maybe AEW or whatever. But back in the day, there was at least a couple main ones. And same thing where it was like, I knew of wrestling. And it was something that everyone else at school sort of, people, you would hear about it. You would like, I knew who The Rock was. I knew who Stone Cold Steve Austin was. Like, I was aware of these people, these characters, if you will. But I do often think that I'm like one gene removed from being somebody who is really into professional wrestling, because it has everything in it is things I like. It has elaborate theatrical violence. It has these ridiculous characters. It has like essentially like there's
like stories and narratives.
It is. And there are people then, I don't know how many of these guys still exist, but like there were people that would get super defensive about whether wrestling was quote unquote fake. And like my attitude now was like, okay, yeah, but that's putting aside maybe some problematic stuff about how it's run. It's like, that's why I like it. It's just a form of violent theater. It's the kayfabe of it. And there's a local wrestling circuit where I live, and I've only been to a couple of matches, but I get it. Like I get why people are into it, and it's easy to poo-poo it, but if you just got to look at it from the right perspective, and whatever perspective people were looking at it from at that time, you still, I mean, heck, Dwayne Johnson's got still rolling. I mean, you want to talk about nostalgia? We watched those Scorpion King and Mummy movies back in the day, and he was still popping dudes in those, and
yeah. I want to say, because I'm also not super knowledgeable on the subject, I will admit, but I want to say it was called the Attitude Era in particular.
I believe
because obviously there was always that edge to professional wrestling, but the Attitude Era was where they really leaned into it.
Yep.
Like some of the names you mentioned, like The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H.
Undertaker?
I think Undertaker, Mick Foley. Obviously a bunch of names that rose to real prominence during that time. I want to say that like maybe even Hulk Hogan like changed his character to where he was like an evil Hulk Hogan or something.
Oh, I think there was a heel turn at some point. I mean, I defer to the scholars in the field, but you're right. That definitely was after that period, because there was the 80s and 90s, and there was a definite shift, and even moments again like stuff that you just hear about, just Undertaker in Hell in a Cell, or people getting thrown off of stuff like these images and the memes these days. I mean, there is a real legacy to that. Whatever a person wants to say about what goes on behind the scenes, I mean, it had a serious cultural impact.
Yeah, exactly. See our gross out episode for the pro wrestling toys that you could squeeze to release smelly, wet sweat onto your hands.
Oh, God.
So, yeah, certainly pro wrestling. That was a big one. I'm just checking. I had some notes here about other ones. Skydiving, if any time that you get somebody like skydiving or parasailing or, kind of like, anything that gets you kind of soaring through the air was obviously out there. I'm sure we're blanking on other extreme sports that existed during that time, but yeah, if you could make it seem that much more extreme. Bungee jumping. Yes, thank you. Bungee jumping for sure. And I guess this is actually kind of a perfect segue into the shows and films that helped define that era, because basically all of the sports we've just listed would just start being like crammed into movies. Yeah. Like it just was like any protagonist, you just like, yeah, but now they're like doing tricks on a board, or like, like it's you just had to have it. What would you say are some films that were like a big driver of the extreme craze?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I'm tempted, like, I'm sure somebody out there has got like a chronological list. I know we got a short list here, though I won't be shy about that. I mean, I think furthest back that I think that we can think here is Point Break. I mean, at that point you are kind of more you're more in the 90s, early 90s, but that really was front and center. Like, oh yeah, this is a gang of like cool thief dudes basically, and they're doing stunts and like that. I mean, the GOAT for me obviously is the Fast and Furious movies. Like that's kind of more like car culture, which is not extreme, but like that's, I mean, a vehicle can be an extreme. I mean, look at some of the stuff. And he's swinging a car on a rope like Tarzan in one of those things. Like that's as extreme as it gets. I mean, they literally they called one of the movies Too Fast, Too Furious. It doesn't get much more extreme than that. So those first 2 or 3 or 4 movies, that's peak where we're at with that. And speaking of Vin Diesel, Triple X. I mean, that's a movie that got sold on the name alone. They just put a billboard up. It just said Triple X. Yeah. Like, what else did you need to say at that time? Yeah. And that was the whole premise. Like the opening scene of that. Have you seen Triple X?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the opening scene of that movie, like the kind of mission statement of it is like, what if James Bond was like extreme? Which again is so weird, because like, yes, some of those Roger Moore movies and stuff are a little corny, but like, it's not, that's what's so interesting. And I think that's kind of what you were teasing out here. What you mentioned is like, it wasn't just like doing extreme stunts. Because that's the thing there is like the opening of the Triple X is this James Bond type dude in a the whole get up or whatever gets killed going into like a rave or something. And I think the unspoken thing there was like, oh man, those guys can't handle this stuff. You need somebody who's like part of the scene or whatever. Like he's got it. And then I mean, like, it's Vin Diesel's character like steals some senator's car or whatever. It's like, this guy like wants to regulate video games or whatever. And he like, drives it off a cliff and then parachutes and he's filming it. And it was just like, he's got this HQ and everyone's walking around drinking Red Bulls or whatever. And it's like, there really was, it wasn't just the fact that you were doing these things. It was the fact that it really was a state of mind and an aesthetic. And because let's not forget, this movie is after a couple of, I mean, I think even in GoldenEye, Pierce Brosnan's like doing a bungee jump. Like those movies were not extreme, but then after that,
Die Another Day, where bro was surfing to outrun a space laser being run by a Korean guy who turned himself white. He's got a power glove. He's in an ice castle that's melting while, I mean, it's so stupid.
It is, but that's there's a real before and after there. That's what's gonna, yeah. No, I say stupid endearingly. It's not like I'm upset by any of what you're describing. Stupid parentheses complimentary. Yes.
Yeah, stupid awesome. But yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, Vin Diesel was a huge part of it. He's doing Fast and the Furious. He's doing Triple X. Was Chronicles of Riddick around that time?
Chronicles of Riddick was around that time. Yeah. That leans more sci-fi, but again, like his screen persona definitely. And then again, The Rock was on the rise, and you had a lot of those actors that really just had those. They were kind of because there are different breeds. There are different styles of star. Like Bruce Willis has got some hits. I wouldn't really call him like an extreme actor. Again, he's doing stunts and Die Hard and stuff. Like, that's not really his persona. That's not really, I could go on, but like, you get what I mean, is there were certain people who sort of rose to prominence in that era in action films, and they were that kind of action star. And I mean, let's not forget, I mean, The Matrix. I mean, The Matrix was
Keanu Reeves, Point Break, and then
there we
Keanu
go.
Reeves,
Yeah, and
The Matrix.
and the Matrix, and The Matrix 2 is like, and just the way that's such an example. I mean, good grief, I've got on my channel a whole video where I kind of talk about one of the projects I'm more proud of, sort of talking about the Matrix, the last Matrix film, and just kind of the legacy of that series. But the film itself, there's a lot of examples of it, Star Wars, but like it's not inherently doing anything that unique, but it's combining all these things that no one ever thought to combine before in like a way. It's like that hackers were big at the time. We've talked about that probably. If not, we will.
Well, if I can inject real quick,
Sure.
Interject. I was going to say that hackers and The Matrix, just to color part of what you're describing,
Sure.
I would almost characterize that as a subcategory of the Xtreme Craze, which was like extreme technology.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is like, my background is kind of an homage to that.
Yes.
But sort of this like part of the evolutions in technology was like, it's also kind of like cool and extreme to be like, I'm really good with computers and like all these cool things I can do with technology.
Yeah, and that's what's so, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because extremeness, you know, we front loaded, we talked about sports, and we'll continue to do so, but again, it really was like an aesthetic and a mentality, because you were taking things that weren't even inherently physical, but there was this sense of competitiveness, of, dare I say, dominance, and like, check out this thing that I can do better than you, basically, and flexing, as we would call it now.
Flexing.
And with hacking, I think I heard someone describe the movie Hackers, which I haven't seen, so I won't, but I've seen parts of it. Like, I heard someone kind of describe it as like, it's about a subculture that never really it never existed in that way. Like, there are hackers, and there are hacker subcultures, and they have their own thing, but like, that type of person is almost entirely fictional.
Yeah.
Not just because they can't do those things, but because there never really was this enclave of people that sort of like looked and dressed like that. They might have done it ironically or like to imitate it, but it was always putting the cart before the horse in that way.
Yeah, it was Hollywood really cranking it up for you know, drama.
But it's like their board was the keyboard.
Yes, there you go. Exactly. See, it's all about boards.
But the Matrix, I think, really was. It tapped into that fantasy in a way that a lot of other pieces of media have. Is like, what if being a hacker made you be cool and like, well, it wasn't real life, it was the Matrix, but it was like that skill set, understanding the system, man.
The system. That's true. It's Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah, and that movie is still resonant now, and people, it's fascinating, where people can take all kinds of different political and social perspectives from it, but that same core theme of like, you know, the world is not what you think it is, and if you break out of it, you can like literally and figuratively just, you know, mess with the system, and that's why it's so cool, and the music, and like the kind of that jungle drum and bass, like that visuals behind you, you're kind of rocking that there, like everything just fit like a jigsaw puzzle, and there's a lot of imitators. I mean, you want to clock American movies with wire fu before and after the Matrix, it's not even a competition. I mean, yeah, they were putting that nonsense in Steven Seagal movies.
Yeah, I would argue the Matrix series, and the first one, I guess the first one in particular, but the Matrix series was like a huge part of the Xtreme Craze, or maybe another way to look at it is, like you said, it was sort of the culmination of the craze in all the best ways. I mean, I'm just trying to go through in my head like some of the key aspects. I mean, you've got, you know, being a cool hacker. Everybody's wearing cool sunglasses. Yep. People are wearing tight black, you know, spandex and leather jackets. You got motorcycles, helicopters, car chases. Yep. You've got
rave and trance and house music going.
Rave, trance, house music.
Straight up, one of those movies just stops for about 10 minutes for a rave scene, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. It is like everything that, like, at that time, and I would argue in many ways today, everything that was like cool was all packed into that package.
The peak of your civilization.
The peak of your civilization, when everyone had
was
cool
he that
cell
wrong?
phones.
Was he that
cool?
Wrong?
Exactly. I just bring back those cell phones. I'm getting ahead to the end of our segment. Bring it back or bygone. But yeah, there's a lot of things about that aesthetic that I think are really cool and plenty extreme. But yeah, certainly the Matrix films, big examples of the Xtreme Craze.
Mhm.
What else? Oh, I saw it. I don't know if you put clock stoppers.
Yes, I
you
put
want to talk about clock stoppers.
Well, Clock Stopper specifically. I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm the person who remembers this movie. No, I was Nickelodeon put it out, but like, I know other people have seen this, but like, I remember thinking that movie was so cool. And there's just,
It was cool.
It came to me because other aspects, like it does open. That's the first time. That might be the first time I heard Blink-182 because All the Small Things plays in the opening.
That's right.
And the kid is, the main character's like, I think he's riding around on a skateboard, but there is a specific part where, because he's got the watch that can stop time, and there's a scene where he is riding a BMX bike and shooting people with a paintball gun at the same time in like this high-tech lab or whatever. And it really is. I mean, if you really just anybody, kids out, younger people watch this, if you want to understand what it was like to be a kid in that era, watch Clock Stoppers, please. Like that really is just Y2K 101.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm looking at your spiked hair currently and remembering too how many characters and personalities where the spiked hair was a big example of what it meant to be extreme. And what Max Keeple's big move.
Yes.
Right? He had his hair spiked in that, right? What else? We had Guy Fieri. I always say
Fieri.
it wrong.
Yeah,
Guy Fieri.
He's still holding it down. Yeah.
The flames is something that the flames aesthetic was big during that time. You got your short sleeve collared shirts with the flames.
And animated shows too. And animated like media directed at kids. I mean, obviously spiky hair like that looks pretty cool when you animate it. I mean, what Rocket Power, need I say more?
Rocket Power. I mean, I'm Bart Simpson. I mean, to be honest,
that's very true too.
He was going strong into the 2000s.
Yeah, so. and like you mentioned earlier, I mean, when you would be adapting, or reimagining older properties for that kind of quote unquote new generation. Like they did the animated Tarzan movie, tree surfing, because not only it's not enough for him to, and again, like, parentheses complimentary, it's not enough for him to swing on vines. He has to surf on the trees. He has to slide on the moss like he's skateboarding.
Can you imagine the calluses on your feet that would allow you to do that? Like, he's like a hobbit. Like, how else is he able to do all of that?
Yeah, he's got a pose. I mean, we're not. Maybe there's an opposable toes situation there, but he leaned into it. I'm not seeing from the monkeys.
Could be. And you
also
got Phil Collins, who is more extreme than Phil Collins on the soundtrack.
I mean, but drums. It's
jungle drum.
There we go. That's drum and bass. Yeah. And also, I mean, Treasure Planet. Again, we're adapting Treasure Island. Not only is it sci-fi, but the dude's got a solar surfing or whatever they called it, and so there's a bunch of like, it's almost like it's like a windsurfing thing. Like that's technically different. Because he's surfing, but it's got the
solar winds or something.
Yeah, solar winds, but windsurfing is like a separate actual thing.
Yes.
I don't do it obviously, or I haven't seen it much, but that kind of almost like water craft type thing, but you're in space. And yeah, just finding, I mean, that was really something that was in the air, literally.
Certainly. Yeah. And I'm sure, I mean, folks out there, feel free to share if you've got other examples that we've overlooked, but there's so many pieces of media that was just like, if you can insert some sort of extreme sport into it, it doesn't matter. You need to make this happen. And I think a lot of things, it was fun. Obviously it reached a saturation point eventually, but it was always a way to inject a little more excitement and extremeness into the media. We've been touching as we go now and again on video games. Remind me again some of the examples that we brought up before. So we talked about like the Tony Hawk and the different pro series that allow you to sort of directly experience these extreme sports. What were some other examples of extreme games that maybe either brought in extreme sport aspects or were extreme, but maybe not necessarily in a sporty way?
Well, I mean, we gotta shout out the Blue Blur, Sonic the Hedgehog. I mean, that's another one again where it's like right back when Sega versus Nintendo, when the console wars kind of meant something and mascot platformers were big. That was the whole thing. Is like, this guy's got attitude, and
Sega does what Nintendo don't. Is that
exactly?
What it was?
Yeah, and again, that's another case like parkour where Sonic himself, I mean, they do these racing games and I find that a little odd, but like he's just fast and he runs fast, but he has cool shoes and an attitude, and he's got Knuckles and his friends. Like there's a reason there's a certain kind of person to this day that gets super into Sonic the Hedgehog, because there are these very memorable characters, but there is also this attitude at the center of it that continues to this day, and the soundtracks like even well into now, but at the time especially, like I mean, my head goes to the classic games because that's where it started, but then you get like into the adventure games and you got Crush 40 on the score, Live and Learn. Some of those tracks. I mean, that's the energy right there.
Yeah, no, those tracks are just burned into my memory of like the moment where you're what is it? Is it like out of a helicopter and then Sonic is like boarding down streets while he's being chased by like
Yeah, big
semi-truck or
city
whatever.
city escape level.
City escape level, like, or like racing around, these dark kind of skyscraper cities at night. Of course, Shadow the Hedgehog. Who can forget the king of extreme, Shadow the Hedgehog, Al the Edge, and his spin-off that he got where it was, even more extreme than Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2.
That was skirting dangerously close, like the goth emo territory. Like if you look at some of the level, some people have said like some of the mission names in those games can be mistaken for like My Chemical Romance B-sides. It's
actually, now that
he's got a darkness to his heart, I would say.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, maybe at some point we'll have to do an episode about sort of the emo scene.
Yeah,
goth,
I'm gonna take the reins on that one.
Yeah.
But with Sonic, specifically, in all seriousness, like the level design was so clearly patterned. Like you have these loops, and you have like a lot of that was to emphasize the speed and there was a
like
spectacle.
A skate park.
Yeah, and a lot of times on those levels, it's not hands off necessarily, but like the way they're designed, and to be totally honest, that's why I've never been super crazy about them compared to Mario and stuff, is you'll have these segments where you're just watching the dude cook basically and just fly around, but then all of a sudden you have to actually strategize,
start controlling again.
Yeah, it takes some getting used to if you're not super familiar with it, but there is this spectacle to it, and I think that's the important thing to remember too throughout all of this, is it's not just about doing it or about the look. It's about like, sit back and watch this person, watch what they're doing, watch them pull off this cool stunt, watch them jump out of this plane, watch them hack this mainframe or whatever. There is a performative quality to it.
Yeah. And I want to say too, because obviously, we could do probably a whole other episode on the legacy of Sonic the Hedgehog. I know we did one on Mario that you folks out there should definitely check out. But I think there's something about Sonic that is, like you said, there's a lasting power to him. People obviously joke around about like places like DeviantArt, like everybody's got their persona of like their OC the Hedgehog. Like, but there's something about him that really speaks to people. And I think it ties into maybe elements of the Xtreme Craze, which is that he is this combination, he and his friends are this combination of like individuality, elements of being kind of like mature and I do things my own way. And at the same time, he has like an immaturity to him where he's very like carefree and goofy. And, he's eating chili dogs and wisecracking and never takes anything overly seriously. And so he's like this interesting combination of like sort of adult, sort of kid, almost like late kind of teens. And I don't know. I think that's maybe that's kind of getting at something with the Xtreme Craze, is it was like this time, it was a way of a generation expressing their individuality and independence, but also like, I'm going to have fun as I'm doing it. Like, I'm not pretending to be like my parents, and that's how I'm showing I'm mature. Like, I'm going to wear a suit and tie, or I'm going to, dress and pretend that I'm a real adult. It's like, this is my way that I'm choosing to be mature while still embracing the fun and the immaturity that can accompany living free of boundaries and rules and people trying to shut me into a way of life that like, no, I'm going to do it my way and I'm going to be cool doing it. And like, you
hit the nail right on the head. 'Cause I think probably throughout most of time, I mean, the way that young people kind of come into their own and sincerely or sort of performatively announce their maturation or what they perceive as their maturation or departure from old norms is by doing things that are or seem reckless and rebellion, and depending on what time and place you live in history, that might be tolerated or more or less tolerated. But a lot of this media, especially when kids are getting access to their own televisions and games and soon their own phones and internet and stuff, it allows and encourages, for better or worse, this sense of like, you can't tell me what to do. And I think that to your point, to kind of flip it around, we talked about Mario, obviously. I think the reason why there is, not that there's not Mario fans or fans of any other fictional character or video game character, but with Sonic, when you have a character that generally doesn't speak and is generally very controlled for branding purposes as kind of being pleasant, that doesn't leave a lot of room for characterization. And I think with Sonic and other people around him, I mean, it's when you introduce rebelliousness or when you introduce individuality, even if it's kind of like a very one-note front a lot of the time, it also introduces the possibility of this character having kind of a sense of self and separateness and individuality. And that opens the door for other creators and other fans to put them in, like, to have them explore other difficult emotions, right? Or put them in different situations that, even if it might seem kind of goofy or cringe or whatever, sometimes it's like, at least it invites that. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I feel like even I can understand it. I'm outside looking in, I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe that is the flip side to being extreme, is you can be extreme like with intensity and aggression and action, but maybe there's an extreme of the heart where you're allowed to boldly explore other emotions.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yes. And on that note, I'm gonna get thrown out a window if I don't mention this. Devil May Cry.
Devil May Cry.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. What could be more extreme than Devil May Cry?
Yeah, and even just I think it's Hideki Kamiya, the dude who was kind of the lead guy on those games, and just also that mentality of just like everything is so on, everything is so like because I think I had heard like the mindset for those games, like everything this dude does is supposed to be cool, and like Beautiful Joe, it was like this
Joe,
weird.
Yes.
That's maybe apples and oranges, but like same creative team where it's like everything that he does is supposed to be beautiful, and Bayonetta, it's like everything is supposed to be sexy, and like Okami, everything is supposed to be beautiful. Like we're kind of straying far from a target here, but like when the mission statement is like this is the vibe, this is the mood, and whether they meant to or not, or whether they said it out loud or not, that's what a lot of this stuff was like. Extreme. The mission statement, the number one with a bullet, is extreme.
Yeah. Another thing, which is on the subject of video games, but on the hardware side, like everything Xbox.
Yes.
Like everything that Xbox did, I mean, it's got X in the name. I think a big part of why they chose to call it the Xbox was because of the Xtreme Craze.
Yes.
And maybe it's a chicken and egg where like it also, influenced.
No, I don't doubt it for a second. Yeah.
But I think Xbox was because it was extreme. It was big. It had that, speaking of extreme and technology and how cool can I be with my technology, the Xbox had a huge controller, a big system, this glowing green X. It was all about sort of that, kind of Monster Energy surge, Mountain Dew, like that kind of, black and green. And the Xbox was just a huge driver, I think, of that from a video game standpoint.
Yeah, and other consoles too. I mean, even that whole era, the aesthetics of it, the branding. I mean, you want to talk about separate episodes, video game ads, period. During that time, probably can't even show half of them on here, but like extreme ads. I mean, that was really where it was at, and the other consoles too. Like I don't know timing if it was parallel development, but whatever generation. I can remember the years certain consoles came out better than my relatives' birthdays, but I can't remember generation numbers. It's 6 or 7, whatever. PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. Look at those other consoles and look at the ads, look at the branding. Even the GameCube, even Nintendo now, which we usually see as very sort of peaceable and anodyne. If you go back, I mean, but look at the GameCube, the ads, the branding.
Who are you ad campaign?
The GameCube whisper in the ads, like this kind of like this kind of. I mean, it's edgy adjacent. It's all of these. It's all marketing. Like at the time you look at it, it's like, oh, this is just how things are. This is just what media is like. And then time passes, and we do what we do on this show, which is look back and be like, oh yeah, that was like a totally distinct way of doing things from before or since. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Did Nintendo? I'm sure I'm forgetting of an example, but did Nintendo ever really make a game that embraced aspects of the Xtreme Craze?
I mean, they put Mario in some sports games. They had like a deal with EA or something. They were like they were like an SSX Tricky. I don't know. I mean, this is kind of pushing it, but like in Mario 64, he can kind of do like a breakdancing-ish kick. He can punch and kick people. Like he doesn't. He's kind
of doing some parkour sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I the music and stuff definitely was there. The games themselves might not have. I mean, the branding. I mean, I don't know if I have any around me right now, but I was looking for like one of my old like Play It Loud Super NES.
Play It Loud, yes.
Because we're talking like N64 GameCube era, but I mean you're talking mid late 90s. I mean that's more on the gross out side of things sometimes, but they were not afraid to get a little rowdy.
yeah, certainly. No, I definitely remember, like you said, it might have been more on the advertising side than the actual content of their video games, but they definitely were participants in, we're going to make things extreme, and that's how we're going to sell these games. I'm sure there's no shortage of other games that we're overlooking. What was there was also like NBA Street Jam. Was that another one where like it was all basketball players and then randomly like Mario and Luigi?
Yeah, it was. I forget the exact one, but yeah, I think you could have Mario or Peach square off against Shaq or something. So that's amusing.
Very good.
Yeah, and also this is kind of in between topics, but backyard wrestling. Are you familiar with backyard wrestling at all?
I don't recall.
That had a moment. This is straying close to show Jackass and stuff, which I guess you could loosely lump in with this in terms of just guys being idiots and getting hurt. But backyard wrestling was a thing for a couple of years. I mean, maybe people are still doing it somewhere in, I don't know, Eastern Europe or the Appalachians or something. But this was like people, it's exactly what it sounds like, which is just people just doing wrestling in their backyard. And there was a video game for it. Yeah, I mean, just close your eyes and imagine people hitting each other with chairs or falling into barbed wire in the back of some yard. Like that's the side of this where I'm just like, okay, maybe we don't need to be encouraging people to do things like this at home. Like,
yeah, I think, you know, we had like a slip and slide and, you know, probably did some light parkouring and whatnot. But I don't think we ever got into like intentionally fighting each other for blood sport. I don't think that ever was a thing.
Yeah, yeah, and the one-upsmanship, because the inherently competitive nature of like a lot, like I described, like the aggressiveness of it. Yeah, I mean, not all that stuff ages super well for a lot of reasons. I mean, I can think of one example. There was that game BMX Triple X, which is just like, it's a biking game, but sometimes there's topless women in it or something, and it's just like,
oh, what was
what the heck are you doing, man?
What was it Dead or Alive Extreme, like beach volleyball or something?
Yes,
there was that, which I don't know a ton about those other than it's anime girls with, you know,
yeah,
being
well,
endowed,
it's there again, and that's kind of more of a topic of just video games in general during the 2000s, which is just like, yeah, there's some stuff I'm probably not going to show my kids, but the extremeness, but that's kind of like, I don't want to call it the dark side necessarily, but like when everything has to be like, so I hate to keep coming back to like the dude thing, like that's kind of what it was, is, you know, for better or worse, like most media during that time was marketed to like guys who were just getting into college and tap their first keg, and sometimes that means it's really fun, and sometimes that means it just kind of ages like milk, but that's why we're talking about a broad spectrum of things here. It's like not all of the stuff is created equal. I mean, let's talk about stuff in a little more food and drink, like that.
Extreme food and drink.
Exactly, that's something we can all enjoy. But
that's something all the kids can enjoy.
That's something of all people of all ages can enjoy, and it's got way too much sugar and artificial food coloring in it.
And those are the two things you needed, was sugar and artificial food coloring.
Yes. Well, what are some heavy hitters that you can recall, if only passing them by at the supermarket?
Yeah, black and green, as we touched on with Xbox, and the beverage equivalent. What can get more green than Mountain Dew? What would better describe the Xtreme Craze than just chugging this, you know, nuclear green beverage that I'm pretty sure other countries have outlawed, like Mountain Dew. And I'm a Mountain Dew apologist. Like,
me too. Yeah,
I like a good Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
We didn't really get into Baja Blast, I think, growing up. I know that's seen a resurgence.
Yeah,
but just your classic Mountain Dew bottle or can, however you could find it. I remember Sobe being big. It wasn't really. It was kind of. It's like a milky juice. What would you even call that? I don't know, because you're right. It isn't soda, and it's like a juice, but it's not necessarily clear. There's like something creamy else to it. Yeah. I like the strawberry daiquiri. But I had some of those. I think I had a friend who liked drinking those a lot, and the bottles would always have those fun little things, like fun little messages underneath the cap. And they had like the lizards on them. Like that's something where I wouldn't necessarily call them like inherently extreme, but I would see them. If only for like branding, like deliberate branding purposes, I would kind of see them wrapped up in that scene with the skateboarders and stuff. And I don't know what the first energy drink was, but that definitely was popping off at this time. Like Rockstar, Monster. I think that was around at that time. Rockstar, Monster, Gatorade, which is not an energy drink or a soda per se. There's a lot of sugar in it, but I mean, those, you know, Glacier and there's like lightning and stuff going off on the label. Oh, I thought that was cool. Yeah. They're bringing some of those back. I've seen a few of them in the gas stations every now and then. Yeah. Absolutely. I think I mentioned briefly before Surge, which was different from Mountain Dew, right? Surge and Mountain Dew were not the same. Pepsi and Coke, of course, they had their fair share of extreme bents with their advertising and you know, spin-offs and so lest we forget Mountain Dew and then Mountain Dew Code Red. Mountain Dew Code Red? Yeah, absolutely. Which, you know, they're still selling it 20 years later. I think they were lying about it being limited edition. I don't know. Tell me what you think in the comments. Yeah, that may have been falsely advertised. Yeah. But yeah, certainly that. Foods wise, Go-Gurt, you know, the whole lose the spoon campaign. Yep. Go-Gurt definitely was leaning hard into being more extreme. I had so much frozen Go-Gurt for lunch. Oh yeah, no, frozen Go-Gurt hits different. Like Capri Sun, same situation. Yeah, Capri Sun. The imagery was like, it gets you pumped for enjoying a small snack. Yes. Yeah. Although I have to say, like the strawberry kiwi was like, I did not like the strawberry kiwi. Something about that. Capri Sun or Go-Gurt? Capri Sun strawberry kiwi.
Yeah, it wasn't one of the better flavors. Yeah.
Yeah, it made my like throat feel weird. Like, and I'm not allergic to strawberries or kiwis, but like something about that particular one did not sit well with me. But otherwise, really loved Capri Sun, and you know, when you're done with it, you can inflate it and then like, you know, shoot the dangerous pointed straw at other people.
Yeah,
you can step on it and see how far you can blast it off. So that was always great. Airheads, you know, the airheads, not the best on your teeth, but certainly airheads were a big thing. Then the scary commercials of people's heads exploding, turning into balloons and popping.
Well, yeah, because I feel like I'm getting some deja vu. I feel like we definitely covered some of this in our candy episode because there was some cross pollination. Because I was about to start talking about atomic warheads, and I was like, wait a second, I've seen this before.
Those were definitely extreme.
But again, like it was a cycle. It was like, oh, like look how sour this is. Like the food equivalent of that intensity of that extremeness was, oh, this is so sour. Oh, this is so sugary. I feel like spiciness has been a more recent thing. I don't know. Like everyone trying to outdo each other with hot sauces. I don't think that was as big back then, was it?
I mean, if there was like a spice-loving subculture that existed at the time, but I don't remember. Yeah, I definitely remember things being advertised as like, this is extremely sugary or sour. Yeah. I don't remember that being a thing for spice. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, and you know, listeners, viewers, you can let us know, but I feel like that's more of a 2010s to 2020s situation.
Yeah. Any other extreme foods or drinks you can think of? I know we've been kind of going rapid fire.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was like snack food because, you know, one, you're trying to sell to kids. That's just let's call a spade in this country. But two, it was stuff that could be small, cheaply produced, could be colorful. So I mean, let's just come out and no one's putting like extreme food on like a Michelin star restaurant. I mean, we're talking junk food here, but that plays into the idea of like, oh, you're so extreme and busy and on the go, you got to have this Go-Gurt with you because you can't slow down to use a spoon or whatever.
Yeah, bringing him back one more time, Guy Fieri, definitely a symbol of that extreme era. I mean, do you think about all the people that wear the I think this is from him, right? Like, I hope I'm not like, you know, ratting myself out as not being a true fan of Guy Fieri, but those like visors that had the like mounted frosted tips.
Oh,
like that you can put it on and the whole thing comes as a single package. That was because of him, right? Like, is that the origin, or
that's a really good question. I
could be wrong. Maybe he just had the spiked kind of frosted hair or whatever, but he didn't have the visor to go with it. But like, that is now making me think of him, and in turn that being a big part of the extreme craze.
And that's the interesting thing too, is that I mean, I've got the spiky hair, and you know, if we're straying into talking about fashion and hairstyles, which is all right with me, I never had the frosted tips. Never really. Yeah. Didn't hate them. Again, I look back on it and it's very of its time. There was always some overlap, but that was never really, I don't think our parents would have been willing and able to let us do that even if I had liked it, but it just didn't interest me. It wasn't something that it was much easier to just get the gel and spike it in my hair. I think that was like dudes, that was more like, you know, dudes in their 20s. We're talking like late tweens, early teens for us. Yeah. Guy Fieri's interesting too, because then there you have that, like, that's somebody who is just a
food enthusiast.
a gourmand or whatever term you want to use. Like, he's not an athlete or musician or anything that I know of, but that mentality really bled over into, because we have celebrity chefs then as now, but he really has cornered the market on that particular aesthetic.
Well, but I was a part of the reason I was going to bring him up, and I apologize, I got kind of on a tangent, because many things about him embody that era in terms of his hairstyle, his personality, his clothing with the fire shirt and that kind of thing. But he, I think, is an interesting example of where it was like extreme food, not because it was like, oh, sugary or sour or whatever, but he would find these places. I always forget the name. It's something drivers and
diners, drive-ins, and dives.
Thank you. That's it. Yeah. So that show, his extremeness was like, we're going to find like the craziest foods. Like, this is like the biggest burger, the best Philly cheese. Like he made like the consumption of food at restaurants extreme.
Yeah.
Like there was an extremeness to how he sought those out.
And I don't want to risk saying his name too many times and summoning him, but I look at Mr. Beast and I think about how we have this mentality of like the biggest this, the biggest that. Like, it's not just about the extreme stuff. It's not just about that. It's not just about one-upsmanship, like in and of itself, or like in any given area. There's an individual quality to it, but I think there can also be something empowering about it for other people. You're showing off, but it's a skill. It's not, there's stunts and there's skills. And I've mentioned Jackass, I've mentioned other things, but like, I think there's a difference between performing a particular skill or a particular stunt for finesse, and then just like putting on a performance or putting on a show. And again, there's overlap. The wrestling is performed to a degree, but you still have these moments of, for better or worse, like actual violence and actual intensity and things that are being done physically, and people are actually in the paint. And
maybe there's dimensions where it's a lot of things. Like, it's like there's an attitude to it, of course. There's a way in which it's being presented, but there's also maybe elements of like inspiration and awe at like maybe at the accomplishment. And maybe Guy Fieri isn't the best example of this with the food he's consuming. But like,
it's not just a show of excess. Like a lot of these people that we're talking about, this media that we're talking about, they were made by people, corporations of tremendous amounts of money, X Games sponsorships, good grief. Like we're not pretending that this is some grassroots operation. Yeah. But the actual thing being done ostensibly, or the thing being imitated, is like, look at the specific person or group of people doing this. It's not just money. It's like, look at how much money we have. Look at what we're able to spend to do this. That
is Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast is not. Yeah. He's not a person of talent. He is a person of wealth.
This is not the Mr. Beast 2 minutes hate. But no. But I want to say, I think that the contemporary, where I see that live on in a way, is practical stunts in films. When you practice, when actors practice, when performers practice a move, whether it's dance or whether it's any of the sports, any of the activities we've described, if you want to keep your neck, that's not something you just show up and wing. That's the result of planning and preparation, and not just someone's bank account, but also like the actual endeavor. And that's really where, even for someone like me that isn't super into sports, if somebody is pulling off a trick in a way that is like, oh, I could buy a board and do this. Like, it's not just like some weird thing that I could never do because I don't have the money. I don't have access to like an exact recreation of like a Squid Game set or whatever. Like, you could do that if you want, in theory, and maybe it's kind of pie in the sky. But that was so sort of fun and, dare I say, inspirational about seeing this stuff, as like this person, this dude, this whoever is defying the system, or is doing this sick trick on their bike, and like, maybe I don't want to do that, but I could. And it doesn't. I don't feel envious. I feel hopeful.
Yeah, and it's a real. It is a real sense of accomplishment and a source of inspiration.
The fantasy isn't being rich. The fantasy is being cool.
Yeah, and
so many rich people now are not cool. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right now, like, being super ultra wealthy is not cool. It's not inspiring, other than for people who are misguided in terms of what they think it means to be cool, or to really be like. Well, now we're getting really philosophical.
But let's get philosophical. Yeah, I mean, like, there's a desperation to it, and there's a defensiveness for some people. Like, I think the whole idea of being cool is like, if you're trying too hard to be cool, you're not cool. And even if a lot of this extreme stuff is very calculated and kind of has like a method to the madness, if it works, or if a person likes it, I think it is because they see something genuine in the character. Like, even the Sonic, like we talked about, like, it's, you can look at it and think the whole cool thing is kind of goofy or childish, but it's working for somebody. Like, that, I don't know what else to say that we haven't already said as far as that goes.
Now, how rich is Sonic? Because he's got all of these gold rings.
I was gonna say, well, he's rich in friendship, I think. So you got that background behind you. Let's talk about music. Extreme music.
So this I think is a good visual representation for the listeners. You've got sort of electricity sparking across sort of a techno background. There's kind of these lens flares and a black. I'm not sure what the black goop is representing. I guess it's some kind of, I don't know, soldering liquid, or I don't know. But anyway, it's a kind of a very Windows XP-esque backdrop. And yeah, so the music that I see as being that sort of digital electronic style is sort of that jungle drum and bass, sort of that synthy kind of music that's kind of hard hitting and fast and in your face.
The amen break, yeah.
Yes, exactly. It makes me think of things like The Matrix and things of that sort, because it is sort of this techno attitude sort of sound to it. So certainly that, but any time that you're getting into the realm of your skateboarding or boarding of any variety, a lot of that stuff, the movies we've been talking about that had those kinds of scenes, that's where you're getting a lot of that kind of like pop punk alt, like your Blink-182, your
Green Day, Sum 41. We're talking like like coastal, like Pacific skate punk. I mean, I'm keen on all the subgenres, but like that definitely would get a lot of play in the Tony Hawk games, a lot of sports games, probably like highlight reels for X Games and stuff. I know there definitely were some compilations of these things that had that on there. Just Warped Tour as a concept in general, a lot of shoe brands, Vans and stuff that would kind of cross promote, cross pollinate there. I think I would be remiss to not just tie the room together. At least the first couple of Guitar Hero games. I mean, just music in general, and just the music that was in those games. Like, it wasn't all rock. And I think it's important to distinguish too. Like, when we're talking metal or we're talking rock or pop punk, because metal definitely does like certain kinds of metal. Again, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but I'm thinking like sort of fantasy scapes and sort of this darkness. But when I look at because there is, from a certain point of view, there is some metal, even in like the Matrix and stuff, but it's like Deftones and things. If there's like a screamo quality, there's like this, there is the bass and the beats, and like it's not Metallica. Like I wouldn't consider Metallica extreme.
It's not dad rock.
No, well, it's very. I mean, yeah, some of the Vince Sevenfold fans might have just perked up their ears. All of that is to say, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Those were the sounds of the time, and it's so interesting. Like they were how dissimilar they are. I mean, I'm sure some genius has found a way to combine the two, but we look at like very club music essentially, like the jungle drum and bass. I didn't even know what that was at the time. I just liked hearing it in games, and now I just associate it with menus basically. Like I know it was in the games themselves, but I always think of like choosing my character or choosing my vehicle, and like some like at my cousin's house, like go with the cars in the menu because I just like looking at the cars in San Francisco Rush, and then conversely, like skate punk and pop punk and this stuff that is very much like the drums are still there, especially if you're Blink-182 with Travis Barker, good lord. But that was really where I got into that stuff. Is I didn't know a lot of those bands by name. I would hear these songs in movies, and I was just like, oh, I like the attitude of this. I like his lyrics. I like kind of how it gets me it's like it is angry, but like it's excited.
Yeah,
there's like defend pop punk is like a slogan for some people. Like I don't want to get up on that soapbox, but like the reason I like that kind of music is because it can be kind of sad and whiny, but like it's intense, and like the emotion, the prevailing emotion, at least the style that I sort of like is that kind of rebelliousness, and is that kind of I am kind of PO'd about where the world or my life or whatever, but the prevailing attitude at the end of it is, I'm not going to take it anymore, or it's not resignation. Like the emo stuff might be more sort of operatic and defeated and maybe a bit nihilistic, and metal might be just Lovecraft or Puppet Masters or whatever, which again that has its time and place. But I feel like the stuff that we were seeing when V's was more, again, like, no, this is the music I'm listening to. I have this AMV running in my head of somebody who's gonna mess stuff up.
Yeah. Well, and the instrumentation, which you mentioned briefly with drums, a lot of hard hitting kind of drum percussion beats, certainly being like into drums, I think was a big part of the Xtreme Craze. You're just wailing on the drum set. Also being good at the electric guitar. Maybe to a lesser degree bass, but for sure, like being good electric guitar. And that is where Guitar Hero found a really good sweet spot when we're talking about like both video games and music of that era, is that like the songs they chose for those games oftentimes were very kind of extreme sounding songs. And, I talk about like Dragon Force and Through the Fire and Flames. I mean, you want to talk about being extreme and who can be the coolest kid in school?
Speed metal.
Yeah. If you could play Through the Fire and Flames on expert, you were a god among.
That was like canonization. That's like one of the miracles you need to perform to become a saint.
Yeah. We did have a friend that could play it on extreme. I believe he either accidentally or intentionally was playing in lefty mode without switching the controls over to that. So that made it even more impressive.
Stunting on those fools.
Stunting on them fools. But yeah, certainly Guitar Hero and being good at things like guitar and drums and things like that. Those were considered to be, I think, among the more extreme instruments that you were cool if you could really do those well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And some of it too, I was going to this had popped in my head, so I'll share it. Some of these things I feel like were either like in response to times when it wasn't cool to be that way, or maybe even during the Xtreme Craze, people who actually lived this life weren't cool, but they were portrayed as cool in media. Because I feel like sometimes being a band geek or like really into like certain instruments, I feel like that wasn't always actually cool in real life. Like people didn't treat those people as being cool.
Yeah.
And similarly, like a lot of people that were skaters, like the song Skater Boy, if you listen to the lyrics, he was a skater boy. She said, "See you later, boy." The whole song is about a skater not being cool enough for a girl.
Yeah.
And I guess he does eventually become cool when he's a rock star. So maybe when becoming a rock star, maybe that's always been cool. But but there's things about like certain things that are part of the Xtreme Craze that I feel like those things weren't always as cool as they were portrayed.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is I mean, we're talking about this from firsthand experience as far as media goes. So I mean, the fad was definitely there, but I think if you were to look back years earlier, I think you're absolutely right. Like we're just looking at the shockwave of it. I alluded to that, but I if I was a betting man, or if I just did some more research, I would say that this stuff probably did gain prominence in like the mid 80s, if not even earlier. And when it first started out, it probably wasn't that popular. And people who did it, especially skateboarding at schools, people probably looked at them a little askance. And this is barely related, but I was watching a video, I think I might even share it with you, where someone was kind of talking about like they were defending the Amazing Spider-Man movie from 2012. Like one of the criticisms of that movie was like, Spider-Man skateboards, like that makes him too cool. And they were like, okay, but like that doesn't inherently make you cool. Like that's just a perception that you have. Like there were plenty of people with skateboard that we probably all went to school with who like they were not cool. It was like the the guys in the football team or the prom king or whatever. Like that's you can skateboard and not be cool, and you can be cool and not skateboard. Like it's apples and oranges. But yeah, and I even now like the contemporary version of this, I know I was kind of separating emo and pop punk, even though there's a lot of overlap. Like these days though, it gets watered down, and now everyone kind of refers to all of that as emo, and everyone gets nostalgic about it. And I was like, no, I was there. I can't repeat some of the things that we were calling those kids, and it wasn't cool. It wasn't cool to like that music. I mean, those bands were big, but like liking them was not cool. Or liking some of the deeper cuts or like the more emotion, the emo stuff, that was not cool.
Yeah,
those people got made fun of a lot.
Yeah, or like other trends, like being into comic books, being into video games, being into what's considered like nerdy stuff. I mean, that is the stuff
video
that would get
games
kids...
period. Like all the video game stuff that we've described up until, I mean, it was pop among the people who were into it. It was popular, and maybe some of the defensiveness and toxicity and stuff came from this sense of being a subculture, even though it was a multi-million-dollar industry. But with these things, with everything that we've described, everything, I'm just kind of very slowly tightening a bow on this. With everything that we've described, I think as it becomes more popular, as it becomes more common, again, it gets less extreme, or it's taken for granted more, and the people that are making it want it to appeal to a larger audience, so you start to kind of water it down a little bit. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but then it does lose that edge, and something else that's new and provocative, some other trend or piece of media or genre of music or film or whatever takes its place. And that's just how time goes.
Yeah. We could go probably forever, about all of the different things that happened during the Xtreme Craze, because there's so many great examples of things that happened. But because we were just talking about video games, and because I think that the death of this program, which had many factors at play, but I think its demise is a great bridge into our final segment as we sort of talk about the end of the Xtreme Craze. What happened with G4? And everything that show, its rise, its peak, and then sort of the tapering and fall of the programming. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I feel like that was a major part of this Xtreme Craze.
It's a good microcosm of it, at least.
Yes, exactly. So what is G4 for the folks out there that don't know about G4?
G4 was a network and/or channel where because I was watching, I don't know if it was the same one that you saw. I was watching a video or two on this a while ago, and it started out being a little broader, and it was just kind of like Spike or something. It was just like general programming, but they started to hone in on being like TV for gamers. Like it was like the gamer channel, basically. And at the time, that was pretty neat. And I didn't watch it religiously. I would catch it every time we have conversations about shows. I always have to add the asterisk. Like for most of our childhood, we lived out in the middle of nowhere. We didn't even have television, so like I would catch it now and then at a relative's place. And I think I would see like references to it or people on it, like an EGM. Like I was a big Electronic Gaming Monthly subscriber for a while, which again, talk about being waist deep in extreme gaming culture at the time. They reveled in that nonsense, for better or worse. But G4, it was a television channel, and I would tune in sometimes, and they would have comedy segments or review games and stuff, and I would watch a little bit and go watch SpongeBob or Mythbusters or something instead. but for a certain contingent of people, it was very popular, and they did, and there was definitely this kind of this irreverence to it, and again a lot of pretty dicey humor, to put it mildly by today's standards, but it had a following, and it was very much of a kind with that sort of subculture. And then that started to fade. The people involved with it moved on to other things. I think whatever larger company owned it decided to invest in other stuff, and they came back in fits and starts and tried to change over time. There was a brief revival a few years ago, but the scene is so different now. 'Cause, I mean, just talking about gaming specifically, I mean, everything is so focused on streamers, and they have their own sort of personalities. And I know there's some that you could call extreme in a sense, but like the persona that we imagined hackers to have in the 90s almost just kind of got like there was a blood transfusion. Like they took it out of this one thing and put it into these people. We're maybe showing our age here. I can't name a lot of those folks. I know some from years past. Your ninjas, your Markipliers, whatnot, but I know there's so many more, but I don't even know, but are racking up more views than I'll see in a lifetime. Having a person that has like this look and this personality, and they've got the space, and they are cultivating an audience in that way, that is where the spirit of that lives on, I think, for richer or poorer. Yeah. And I think I don't really mourn G4 or other shows or channels like that, or even gaming magazines, honestly, because it's like, what use would that even be? Like, this is just not what it's about anymore. I mean, the magazines there was this atmosphere of like, kind of scandal to it and intensity, and like this is this thing that we're all kind of into, and F you if you don't like it, basically. And I'm just kind of older now. I think most people are older. I think the places I go to get gaming news and news about media period is just, we're all trying to get off our phones and internet, but like it's just faster. Like it's I don't need to get a magazine every month. I don't need to tune into a channel. It would be vestigial. I would only ever be engaging with it out of a sense of kind of deliberate nostalgia. Maybe that kind of helps us segue into kind of bring it back or bygone on a broader scale for us as far as our closing segment goes. But I think a lot of the stuff, the look of it, the feel of it, is absolutely something that I think we can continue to cultivate. But as far as the specific platforms and the specific literal and figurative channels that it goes through, I think we've just kind of moved on.
Yeah. I think that, like a lot of these trends, and G4 was one such illustration. They went kind of more and more extreme, more edgy at times. It got into the realm of being offensive and misogynist, and the sort of the darker parts of, I would say, of the Xtreme Craze that weren't so great. And we probably, well, we definitely should not ever bring back and just say bygone to. But I think there was a critical mass where people started to get burnt out or tired of things being presented as extreme. It started to become kind of a joke. It was kind of something to be made fun of as parody, rather than it being a sincere sort of extremeness. And it just started to become passé. And then I don't know how I would describe what came after. I mean, I guess that would that be like Frutiger Arrow, like those types of things?
I think a lot of these, well, I think of it in terms of traffic. Like you've got multiple cars on the road, some are going faster than others, a few of them might come up next to each other, one pulls around and comes ahead. I mean, every episode that we do, we're talking about something that was somewhat in parallel with each other. Our range is somewhat limited given our own use. I would say it was happening alongside it, but
it overtook
to your point.
it.
Well, to your point, yeah, like mid to late 2000s, we do start moving out of that look, and we do start moving more into Frutiger Arrow, and I hate to say it, but corporate minimalism and a lot of those kinds of things, which I don't think we're burying the lead by saying, but if we do an episode on that, I think you can all tell what side of the coin we're going to fall on as far as bringing it back or bygone. But it's a reaction to it. I mean, yeah, as we've discussed and kind of we've danced around the subject a little bit, but there were a lot of pretty good reasons to move on from some aspects of this craze. But I think a more cynical or maybe more accurate perspective is coming at it from the other side, is that companies realized they could sell even more stuff and make it simpler and more accessible if they sanded the edges off.
Yeah.
I don't think that's terribly complicated or controversial. I mean, to go back to Nintendo as an example, they just straight up jacked Apple's logo. They've come back around, but like they went from that GameCube era and all that we just described to having like a plain gray logo. And then we minimizing all the apps, and just apps period, just everything is like condensed into one device, and we lose this individual feel and tone and look, and again, some of it's coming back around. Nostalgia's happening. The young people are getting back into pop punk. They're getting back into all that stuff. That's
Y2K. Kinda.
Yeah, and I mean, time marches on. Yeah, I'm not going to pretend we were the first folks to reflect on this stuff, but it's heartening, I guess I would say, in a way. I guess my hope would be that they remember the good stuff, and I think that like my attitude is, I never have wanted to be like uncritical nostalgia, because I think that can be kind of dangerous. I think that if you unquestionably accept the past as being better, then you're kind of setting yourself up to repeat old mistakes. And my thought and hope and my impression so far is that when these things come back around, people will remember. You want to remember the bad stuff so you don't repeat it, but you also want to remember the good stuff so you can pluck that out and be like, okay, these are the parts we want to bring back. These are the good vibes. These are the good parts. This is the music and the look, and we can leave the bad nonsense in the past, and we can just bring back the good stuff. That's when as this stuff continues, as we talk about bringing it back or bygone, I like to be very particular about this, as I think I always do, because I don't want it to be so binary. But I would say, bygone to the more toxic, overly masculine and competitive and dangerous aspects. But we don't need kids doing backyard wrestling. Let me just state the obvious. But as far as the attitude of it, of like, go outside and physically do things safely, please, but go do sports, do cool sports, hang out with your friends, question authority, hydrate, but have some soda every now and then if you want, because it does taste pretty good. I mean, let's be alive, please.
Yeah. I think it was a time of aggressive living. It was, in your face, out there. Let's see how far and how hard we can push it with the things that we do. But it was a time very much defined by doing. I mean, at the extreme was in the actions that you were taking and the things that you were seeing in others and the things you were consuming. It was a time of extremeness, and there is a time to not be so extreme. Like you said, you can be too extreme, and that can take many forms, whether it's acting recklessly to the point of endangerment, or for young men, asking or acting so aggressively over the top masculine that it becomes toxic, and we're trying to keep this program positive, but there was a lot of negative things, negative ways
there's
that
a
women
reason
were portrayed.
extremism is usually not a positive descriptor of something. So, even if you take the E off.
there was a lot of misogyny during that time, and portrayal of women that, looking back, was like, that was very inappropriate and offensive towards women, and it was not everybody experienced that period equally. So I agree.
4 words: Crank, starring Jason Statham.
Maybe don't watch that one, but good example. But those things, those negative aspects certainly leave behind. But I totally agree. I would say bring it back to engaging in activities that, safely, and I'm again not excessively so, but like, challenge yourself and put yourself out there, do things with other people. There is a social aspect to these extreme things. You're not doing it so nobody else can see you do it. Oftentimes you're not doing it alone. It's we're all going to the skate park. It's not, I'm going to go there alone and set up a camera. It's like, it was an inherently social thing to engage in the extreme stuff. And to watch these movies together, to do these things
multiplayer
together.
games with friends.
Multiplayer video games with friends. Exactly. So I would say all of those things, I think, bring back. And then also, like, at times it probably, definitely was being overly optimistic, or maybe not engaging in, let's say, other concerns or emotions or whatever. But I do feel like a lot of stuff nowadays is kind of like cynical or nihilistic, or, kind of mumblecore sad. There's this undercurrent to a lot of stuff that is just kind of like a bummer. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of the extreme era, the Xtreme Craze was not that. It was like, there was a lot of like positivity, or at least a sense of like, get after it and be excited, like an unbridled enthusiasm for life. That is very different, I think, from a lot of stuff today, where it's like, we got to explore the darker, more mature, more negative. We got to focus on all the ills of society. And believe me, those things need to be addressed and should be given their due time. But when it's sort of all that you're seeing and consuming, or like everything has to have this bent to it, that is like, we can't just, again, I feel so silly.
Stop watching A24 and start doing a 360.
Exactly. Thank you. But like, this is a weird thing, but like, I think some more people should consider being like Sonic the Hedgehog now and then. Like, just hang out with your friends and eat a chili dog and goof around and go for, sprinting around being being stupid. Like, it's okay to enjoy yourself now and then. And don't have everything be so serious all the time. And so buttoned down. I feel like,
if it is serious, have the attitude be like, no, let's make something happen.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like you said with the pop punk music, is like, it's okay to have like difficult emotions and things that you're experiencing, but like, try to bring it back around to like, I'm not going to take it anymore, or I'm going to like step away from it now and then, and just do some I don't know, some tricks on my scooter or something, like. But like, the solution is not to continue to be bummed, and the solution is not to turn towards things like doom scrolling or spending all your time alone, because that is heavily incentivized nowadays, and that is not extreme.
Yeah, very, very true. Very true.
Or it's extreme in other ways that are not the kind of extreme that we're advocating for. The positive parts of the Xtreme Craze. So I guess we kind of keep cheating on this segment, because we keep saying like, we'll bring back this, but like, say bygone to that. Like, we're not saying.
Well, I think it's important, because I think nuance is really something that in all seriousness, I think makes these conversations valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And to live with extremeness but in nuance is the takeaway of the day.
Extreme in moderation.
Extreme in moderation. Yeah, let's just really confuse everyone out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed today's episode in particular. We all always have fun topics, but this one, that's an era that's really fun to reflect on, and it does make me now want to go back and watch some Triple X and
near and dear to my rapidly beating heart. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, any other aspects of the topic for today before we wrap things up?
Heelys.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Just naming things. That's okay.
Let us heel off into the sunset.
Yes.
One awkwardly leaned foot at a time.
Never had those, but I applauded the concept. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those were pretty sick.
That's the shoe that's leaving the door right now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for tuning in and listening and or watching us. Please, the usual like, comment, and subscribe. It always helps to promote what we're doing here and bring more viewers, and it also helps us make more things for you. So, as always, I've been your co-host, Kyle White.
And Trevor White.
And we are the Bygone Bros.
Rock on.
Stay extreme.